Welcome to Understand the Math. In this video, I'm going to teach you the basics of polynomials. We'll start with the definition and then walk through some examples where we'll identify the leading term and constant term. After that, we'll learn how to classify a polynomial based on its degree and number of terms. Let's get started. Let's start with the definition. A polynomial is typically defined as p of x, and it's equal to aₙx to the n plus a'n minus 1 x to the n minus 1. Notice that the power of x is getting smaller, and then all the way down to a1x plus a0. If a polynomial is written like this, it's called written in standard form. N is always a non-negative integer, and it's called the degree of the polynomial. The a's are just the constants, and they are real numbers. aₙx to the n, that's the term with the highest power of n. It is called the leading term. And then a0, that is the number that doesn't have an x with it. That's called the constant term. Let's now look at some examples. In these examples, we are going to identify the leading term and the constant term. Let's look at our first example. The leading term is just the term with the highest power of x, and then this polynomial, the leading term is 2x cubed. And then the constant term is just the term that doesn't have an x with it, and that, in this case, is equal to minus 6. Let's now look at our second example. In this example, the leading term is equal to 4x to the 6th power. And then the constant term, that's the term that doesn't have an x with it, that's equal to 5. We're now going to look at how to classify a polynomial. A polynomial can be classified by its degree and number of terms. To make this easier, I constructed two charts that we can use. The first chart has the degree of the polynomial listed and then the name that it's called. And then the second chart has the number of terms in the polynomial and its name. Let's now look at some examples. In each of these examples, we are going to be given a polynomial, and we're going to classify it by its degree and its number of terms. Let's look at our first example. In this example, we only have one term, and that term does not have an x with it. So we can think of this as 8 times x to the 0, because we know that x to the 0 is equal to 1. So our degree is 0, and that tells us that our polynomial is a constant. And there is one term. When we look up to the right-hand side, we can see that it's called a monomial. Let's now look at our second example. Our second example has two terms, so it is a binomial, and then the leading term has a power of 1 because it's just x. So our polynomial is going to be called linear because the degree is 1. So we have a linear binomial. Let's now look at our third example. In this example, we have three terms, so it's going to be a trinomial, and then the highest power of x is 2, so it's called quadratic. So we have a quadratic trinomial. You may want to pause the video and see if you can do these next two on your own. Example 4 has two terms, so it's a binomial. The highest power of x is 3, so it is a cubic. So we call this a cubic binomial. Let's now look at our last example. We have, let's see here, 4 terms. So it's going to be a polynomial with 4 terms. And the highest power of x is 4, so it's called a quartic. This is then a quartic polynomial with 4 terms. And that's it. I think you'll find when you go on to further mathematics that you'll use these definitions quite a bit. If this video has been helpful to you, please consider subscribing to my channel. Keep believing in yourself and have a great rest of your day.